Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, and I'm not sure 2 hours will be enough. This morning we have so much to cover, and we're going to be joined by our friend Michael Joseph, who has that amazing event coming up on Saturday at the Wings of Eagles Discovery Center, and that, of course, is the Return of the Red Tails 2024 Tuskegee Airman Display Dedication. We're going to talk about that with Michael Joseph in the 7 o'clock hour. But it's time to look at school vote results. Now, I will say I put as much research into it this morning as I could, but I did not go to every single school district. So if you have something you would like to specifically see, depending on the area that you live in, I will do my best to find it. We're going to go through some of the bigger ones. But if you are in maybe a smaller school district and I do not read the results, please feel free to reach out at that number on the bottom of the screen. And during a commercial break, I will find all the information you need to know. But let's go through it. Corning Painted Post. Boy, this was a close one. Well, it was and it wasn't. They needed to get 60% plus one. So therefore, they did not pass. It did not pass. But the budget, 1,431 voted yes. No, 1,418. Now, again, I know the threshold was 60% plus one, which was a tough hill to climb. But this goes to show that the levy was not, what's the word I want to look, not really encouraged by the residents. What a heck of a turnout, though. I went to vote yesterday around 4. Had to wait in line. You don't always see that. So again, the budget failed in the Corning Painted Post School District. And just since we're on Corning Painted Post, buses and vehicles, though, were approved. Interestingly enough, quite a big discrepancy. And again, it's got to be because of the tax levy that was being proposed. But buses, yes, 1,725 to no, 1,118. Now, this is coming from Corning Painted Post's website. Southeast Steuben County Library was approved, 1,734 to 1,118. So very close, the exact same number of no's for the buses and the library. The Board of Education results, those that will be on the school board, the top 3, Kelly Bacalus, Sam Nichols, and Dale Wexel. That was so they needed the top 3 out of 4. Kevin Ashton came short with 1,343. In Elmira City School District, the budget passed. Quite a, low turnout. 669 yes to 186 no. So pretty easy win there on the budget in the Elmira City School District. Elmira Heights School District, the budget passed 221 yes, 54 no. And in Horseheads, I know there was a lot of talks of this, the budget passed in Horseheads, 1,824 said yes, 906 said no. And the proposition to buy new school buses passed as well. So if you have any questions about your specific local area, please feel free to reach out at any time. Now, the Corning Painted Post School District, that failed. The tax levy increase will be 1.91%, is the way I understand it. Again, reach out. We're not going to read numbers all morning, don't worry, but that is the breaking news, and I will bring that up throughout the morning show because I know some of you are just waking up, and it is difficult to find the results for all of the various school board votes. Okay, we've got a lot to cover this morning outside of the school vote. But again, please feel free to reach out if you say, hey, I want to know about Addison, or I want to know about Campbell. Just let me know. Okay. Did you see, by the way, just as a side note, when we talk about needing to know who you vote for, right? Bob Goldbar Menendez. The New York Post, if you have a moment, you can see the photos of what was discovered in his cluttered, as they describe it, home. Just loaded with $150,000 in gold bars, $480,000 in cash, and the photos show that he stored some of that cash in boots in his closet. Over $600,000 in cash and gold bars stashed around his cluttered New Jersey home, including a stack of bills stuffed inside a Timberland boot. Jurors at the Menendez trial, which began last week in Manhattan federal court, were shown dozens of photos taken inside the Garden State Democrats' Englewood Cliffs house during a June 2022 raid by the FBI. The pictures presented in court on Thursday show gold bars, small and large, some appearing to be older with nicks and scratches on the surface, while others are wrapped in clear plastic packaging. Thick stacks of cash inside various bags, and even a pile of money stowed inside a well-worn work boot. Yes, I guess they're making a big deal about his house being cluttered, but whatever the case may be. I mean, you don't want to have someone come in to clean every couple of weeks if that's what your house is full of. Agents found 13 gold bars worth $150,000 and over $480,000 in cash in closets inside the senator's jacket and in designer bags. Again, you can't have someone clean up the house, the cluttered house, if that's how you're storing your loot. Now, I'm not going to go through all the charges of Bob Goldbar Menendez, but my understanding is, I believe, yes, the trial will be on pause after yesterday for a week for Memorial Day break. So there you go. You can find out more at the New York Post if you've been following that closely. We are starting off, perhaps what you would call a little bit different, because there's a lot of breaking news. Oh, by the way, speaking of breaking news, I guess it was announced this morning that President Biden has issued another school loan relief, the erasing of school debt, which it comes at an appropriate time when we see how colleges have been indoctrinating their students, filling them with anti-Semitic hate. I've got some examples of not too much of protests, but of college campuses in general coming up in just a little bit. We'll tell you more about that with Joe Biden. Also, some updates on Trump's trial. Really a good piece, and we're going to get to the whole thing later on in the show, by Alan Dershowitz. He was there on the final day, and he gives us kind of a bird's eye view of what is happening at that trial. So we'll talk about that as well. What else? Some international updates as well. One thing I think, I've got a little time here. I don't want to focus too much on this. I think conservative media has kind of a problem when it comes to seeing someone like Bill Maher. And Bill Maher may say something that conservatives would agree with. And so instantly they jump on him as if he's on their side now. So I think you have to, and it's not just Bill Maher. It may be a Jon Stewart, maybe something like that. I'm not sure what it is about conservative outlets that want to be in, I guess, what they deem the cool group. I'm not really sure. But so I say take this with a grain of salt, though I do think he had an interesting message. He was on The View yesterday, and he was talking to co-host Joy Behar, She said, "I'm nervous about saying anything against Biden because I feel as though, not that I have so much power, and you have some more than I do, obviously, but are you afraid that you might, influence the people who are on the fence?" So Joy Behar admitting on The View that she doesn't want to talk bad about Biden because maybe you, the viewer, aren't smart enough while watching her to realize that you can, weigh your issues on a candidate. So you may, in Joy Behar's mind, you may go every morning and watch The View to find out who you are going to vote for President of the United States. Therefore, if Joy Behar says anything negative about who she wants to win, well, that could just be enough to persuade you, the viewer. Bill Maher responded saying, "I think you lose all credibility. I do. My bond with my audience has always been, I don't pull a punch." Okay. "My bond with my audience is, you're not going to like everything I say, but I'm saying what I really think is true." Bill Maher noted that Biden may only be a few years older than Trump, but acts way older, saying, "I saw him yesterday making that speech. I'm sorry, he's cadaver-like." Oh, that goes against what Joy Behar stands for. Again, no criticism of the president. She said, "But his brain is good. He's still great." Bill Maher compared Biden to the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was criticized by Democrats for not resigning at a time that she could have been replaced by a Democrat president. When I came back from the strike in September, I said he should get out, meaning Biden, because he's just lost the faith of the people. It's not fair. He's actually done a pretty good job. But I said he's going to be Ruth Bader Biden, is the term I used. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she stayed too long at the fair. I remember Obama had her over to the White House like in 2013 to hint, hey, spend more time with the grandkids. Would that not be a good idea, Ruth? And she didn't take the hint, and she was not in good health, and she stayed too long, and she ruined her legacy and got the Supreme Court now to be a pretty right-wing organization. I said Biden shouldn't do that, but ego. He's Dracula. He has crossed oceans of time to be here, and he's not going to give it up now. And then just to show you, because again, I do think conservative outlets jump on things like this, just to show you where he really stands. There's other comments, but I thought this was interesting. Hold on. Later in the same segment, Maher objected to an earlier comment from Joy Behar when she suggested that Trump supporters might as well put a swastika on their MAGA hat. Now, that goes to show you how out of touch Joy Behar is, because who would be the party that would put a swastika on their person? Just look at the protests, okay? Hamas flags flying at college campuses. But this is what Bill Maher said. I'm not going to defend Donald Trump ever, but I would never say that he should put the swastika on the cap, because I think you can hate Donald Trump. You can't hate everybody who likes him. It's half the country. I don't want to live in that country. I don't want to live in a country where I hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country. And then Joy Behar, showing how hilarious she is, a well-known comedian, said, "How dare you disagree with me?" But he did say what's going to get him elected is this woke stuff. And I think there's a very good point to be had there. He also clashed, I don't want to focus too much on this. He also clashed with Sunny Hostin. I don't watch, I'm not going to lie. About Israel. And she did the kind of almost cliche argument, which is, quote, "Are you at all concerned about the innocent civilians that have been collectively punished and murdered, largely children and women? Are you at all concerned about the fact that the International Criminal Court just today issued a subpoena for Bibi Netanyahu? Are you at all concerned?" It's such a used and worn out way to start an argument. I can't remember who it was that was calling this out when it was happening on college campuses before all of this protests that we've been seeing. But when there was a conservative speaker and it went to a Q&A section of the program, it was always very much like that. They would show the worst possible scenario and say, "Don't you feel for that person?" Bill Maher said the ICC's move, of course, was ridiculous, noting it was a war. He said they were attacked and they were defending themselves. Now, this is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? That is the question. And Hostin responded, yes. So if they need to be destroyed, how do we do that? It's a war. I don't know how to do that, and you don't know how to do that. And then, of course, saying, of course, everybody is concerned about civilians and innocent lives. That's what happens in war. Here's a way to stop it. Stop attacking Israel. And that's a point that has been missed by so many in the media and so many like the Sunny Hoistons and people like on The View that continue to ignore what Hamas did on October 6th. So I think that's a good point. Here's a way to stop that. Stop attacking Israel. That caused many people in the crowd to applaud. Joy Behar chimed in saying, people need to stop calling for the annihilation of Jewish people. Hostin also took issue with Bill Maher's use of the term woke and said she was surprised to hear him say it because she said the term has been weaponized by the political right. Hostin argued that the black community historically used the term woke to note that they needed to be aware of social injustices. Well, Bill Maher said, words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want because maybe that is a word that is triggering. So let's not use that word. What do you want to call it? The super far left? Don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated Jews. And that's what. But just to give you an idea of the infighting, and I truly believe that's more of a rarity in the Democrat Party today, the defense of Israel. So it's interesting to see him defend Israel and saying, if you don't want a war, stop attacking Israel. I think it's a very good point. But as I said, don't buy into the, wow, Bill Maher's on our side now. He's not. He's clearly not. Now, getting away from that, I'm going to tell you a few ways as we get into a couple of university updates and some other issues as well, that Biden has announced $7.7 billion student debt handout for 160,000 borrowers. We're going to talk about that when we come back. And if you're just joining us, look at all these waves coming in. Thank you. If you're just joining us, if you have a question about the school vote, please feel free to text in. If you'd like to know if your school district, if I didn't read it, if I didn't read it, just let me know. In-person waves too. But we'll go through that when we come back from break because I am running extremely late. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. As I announced at the beginning of the show, Corning Painted Post Area School District, the budget failed to reach the 60% plus one. Therefore, it did not pass. A pretty good turnout. Yes at 1,431, no at 1,418. So nowhere near that 60% plus one, but still very close. Buses and vehicles were approved. Southeast Steuben County Library was approved, and the Board of Education results, the top three elected, Kelly Bacalus, Sam Nichols, and Dale Wexel. Elsewhere, the Elmira City school budget, well, pretty much everywhere else passed. Elmira City school budget passed. Elmira Heights School District passed their budget. Horsehead School District passed. So if you have any questions about your specific, maybe local school district, just let me know. Just text me. Speaking of education, we're going to talk a little bit here about a couple of college updates. I don't have a very long time because I ran really late with that first segment. But after the anti-Israel speeches, a law school has now curtailed graduation traditions. CUNY Law School is known for its diversity and activism, and lately for strongly worded pro-Palestinian commencement addresses. This year, the administration canceled its annual student speech. That's the way to really stick it to the protesters. For the past 2 years, commencement speakers at the City University of New York School of Law have made support for Palestinians and opposition to Israel a focus of their speeches. Yeah, well, it's just like we're seeing with the protests in general. Once that first domino falls, then you have so many people seeing any kind of fad and looking at it and being, I want to be the cool one. I want to show that I care the most, because you've got to remember the popular thing to do is to be the most offended, the most aggrieved. In this case, what has changed, not pretty recently, at least been sped up, is to also be cool, you have to spew anti-Semitic speeches and protest chants. Well, this year, well before other campuses across the United States faced upheaval over pro-Palestinian student demonstrations, the CUNY Law School administration took a new tack. In September, before the Hamas attack on Israel, the school announced that there would be no student speaker at all this year at a commencement ceremony. So they were proactive even before the October 7th terrorist attacks. That's how bad it's become on college campuses, that they knew before that attack that the speeches at this law school during graduation would be anti-Israel. It's unbelievable. That's coming from the New York Times. And just to show you that it's not just the anti-Semitism, it's the indoctrination in general. I know we've been talking about it extensively on the program, and I don't want to dive too deep into it, but this is right down the road at Cornell. Cornell University is, quote, corrupting its science, math, and engineering programs by using its diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, that you've heard so much about, policy to reject a huge portion of candidates for faculty jobs because their views are deemed counter to the school's left-leaning ideological orthodoxy, a merit-based campus advocacy group is alleging. So they're not taking perhaps the best candidates for science, math, and engineering, very important studies. They're not taking necessarily what could be deemed the best candidates. They're taking the candidates that will pledge their allegiance to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A report by the Cornell Free Speech Alliance cites smoking gun evidence that the DEI statements, and this is a real thing, this has been happening on college campuses for quite some time, where you have to sign a statement. There was a university that just finally stopped the practice, but if you're going to apply, you have to sign this statement, this oath, this vow to be adherent to the rules of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the smoking gun evidence of the DEI statements of prospective professors were used to reject 21% of applicants in a recent faculty search in a hard science field. This isn't like the class that we talked about where the one protester who was arrested, which was 19th century Marxist poetry. It's not a professor in that. We're talking about a professor looking for a job in one of the hard sciences, science, math, engineering, and being turned down because they did not pledge their allegiance to DEI. The upstate New York Ivy no longer requires candidates to submit explanations of how they would advance Cornell's commitment to the principle of DEI, but such forms were used against the job hopefuls anyway, is what the Free Speech Alliance said. The rejections came without fairly considering the candidates' academic credentials, research, or teaching ability. The analysis was based on a whistleblower document and internal reports provided to the Alliance by Cornell staffers. Yes, because I'm sure Cornell staffers are getting a little sick of it as well. The DEI policy is discriminatory and should be scrapped, said the Free Speech Alliance. Cornell has an opportunity to reverse course and demonstrate principled leadership by loudly and publicly abolishing these DEI policies. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the indoctrination on college campuses, and that's why when we see this news, it's so frustrating for the working class, the forgotten men and women out there. Biden administration announced this morning $7.7 billion student debt handout for 160,000 borrowers. The Biden administration has cleared a total of $167 billion in student loan debt for 4.75 million Americans. Now you're saying, Frank, this can't be the case. The Supreme Court said he couldn't do that. And if there's one thing we know, is that Biden would never want to be a threat to democracy or to our institutions, right? Of course. But no, he laughed at the face of the Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, somewhat recently, at a speech touting the fact that that the Supreme Court couldn't get him. $7.7 billion. Right as we get so close to Election Day, well, it goes to show it's the same with demanding the debates with Trump. Biden is very much aware, or at least his campaign is, that he is down. That he isn't looking great specifically in swing states. So what does he do? Well, it's time to bring out the checkbook of the American taxpayer and get those kids who have recently been calling him Genocide Joe, who have been screaming at his fundraiser, his $25 million fundraiser, been protesting in general, pushing this anti-Semitism. So he needs those students back, buy off their school loans, and also change our foreign policy to better suit those obnoxious protesters' needs. We got to take a break, though. I'll tell you a little bit more about it when we come back. Stay with us. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Michael Joseph during the Steuben Senior Services Fund interview. Don't miss that. We'll find out all about this Saturday's event. So the Biden administration announcing $7.7 billion student debt handout for 160,000 borrowers. This coming from Fox Business. 3 categories of borrowers are covered in the latest handout. People receiving public service loan forgiveness, people signed up for President Biden's Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, who are also eligible for its shortened time to forgiveness benefit, and people receiving forgiveness on income-driven repayment as a result of fixes made by the administration. So again, this puts the total at $167 billion. What a convenient time, as he is being called Genocide Joe by young people protesting. What a convenient time as we near Election Day. Let's piggyback off of that. The U.S., what a weird way of wording that. President Biden's administration will sell nearly 1 million barrels of gasoline in the U.S. managed stockpile in northeastern states states as required by law, the Department of Energy said on Tuesday, effectively closing the near-decade-old reserve. Okay. Now, I don't think we'll see a lot of change in the gas prices, but it could just be a part of a larger picture. But going back to student debt, even though the Supreme Court told him he couldn't do it, here we are today. We may talk about that a little bit more later on. We've got a couple quick things I want to run through. Egypt blew up a possible Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal, apparently changing the framework to the benefit of Israel? No, to the benefit of Hamas. An Egyptian official blew up, I don't know if they should be using that term, a possible ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas this month when he covertly changed the proposal's framework, already greenlit by the Jewish state, to include more demands from the terror group. So what was this? What did he think? Like it's a sitcom? Oh, you just signed this paper. Colonel Potter, and you'll find out what's in it later. Come on. 3 sources told CNN Tuesday the deal fell apart after senior Egyptian intelligence official Ahmed Abdel Kalak made last-minute changes in an offer to Hamas without informing the Israelis, all while keeping the fellow mediators, the U.S. and Qatar, in the dark. We were all duped, said one of the sources. Everybody agrees, though, that you go in and give them a different contract. Abdel Kalak conveyed one set of terms to Israel and another to Hamas, in which the Palestinian leaders received more of their demands. All sides were under the assumption the Egyptians provided the same document that Israel approved. The details signed off on by Hamas included the goal of reaching a permanent ceasefire and a sustainable calm during the second phase of the 3-part agreement. Hamas announced that it agreed to a ceasefire to much celebration in Gaza on May 6th, but Israeli officials were quick to note they had not approved the proposed framework because it was a softened version of what was originally on the table. So they were duped. That's a quick update. Did you see that Spain, Norway, and Ireland will recognize a Palestinian state? They've announced plans to formally recognize a Palestinian state in a move that is likely to bolster the global Palestinian cause but strain relations with Israel. Is this the best time? Palestinian statehood has been recognized by more than 130 out of 193 member states of the United Nations. Tells you a lot about the United Nations. Today, Ireland, Norway, and Spain are announcing that we recognize the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision. I'm not sure if they're seeing the same type of protests. There is an amazing piece, and we just don't have time to get to all of it. It's by Reuven Fenton at the New York Post. And he said, after visiting the site of Hamas's bloody October 7th siege, I know Israel will survive the war. America, not so much. And he goes through and he talks about how, as he was touring these sites, and he saw the pictures of the young people that were murdered and the terrorist attack on these young people. And he thought of how essentially many of them are the same age as the protesters at Columbia. And it's a really powerful piece. And he talks about some of the people that he met, some of the people that he talked to. And again, you can find this at the New York Post. But there was one line in here where he was talking to a resident, and the resident said the war started because they murdered us and butchered us. And because of that, we had to make this war. We had no choice. He visited a haunting car cemetery where some 300 scorched automobiles were stacked to form a grisly wall. Using a custom chemical agent, Hamas burned the cars so thoroughly that the bodies inside burned to what amounted to 300 bags of ash, plus an odd bone. A deliberate throwback to Auschwitz, officials believe. The guide that was taking him around said, for some reason, I can't understand how in America, in the most important universities, the leaders of tomorrow, the top 5% of the smartest people, supposedly are rooting for them, meaning the butchers, the terrorists, rooting for Hamas. He said after his visit, he said, after all I've seen today, I am confident Israel will survive, America not so much. Here in beleaguered Israel, I see a quiet determination among its stoic and sunburnished residents to rise above the calamity the way they always have, by burying the dead and soldiering on. Because here, unlike at Columbia, Survival is on the line. Political activism is a luxury few have time for. And one of the comments, and I can't find it here, I thought I had it marked. One of the tour guides, or whatever you call it, said something to the extent, well, maybe if the protesters on college campuses saw this, they would change their mind. And one of the guests on the tour said, unfortunately, I don't think that would be the case. Yes, I think the hate has overrun them. I think the hate and the... here it is. If the students from Columbia saw this, maybe they'd change their mind. To which a member of my group responded, not at all. And I agree. It's become too much of a popular cause for them. They believe they're too cool to change their attitude now, which is hate, anti-Semitism. It is. And I do want to say, we're getting away from this topic next, but if you get a chance, check that article out at the New York Post. After visiting the site of Hamas's bloody October 7th siege, I know Israel survived this war. America, not so much. We got some comments coming in. If you are just joining us, I've read some of the results for the school elections. If you have an area you would like to know specifically, just text me, and I will do the research quickly. The Corning Painted Post school budget did not pass because it did not reach the 60% plus one. Buses and vehicles were approved. Southeast Steuben County Library was approved. And the Board of Education results, Kelly Bacalus, Sam Nichols, and Dale Wexel. Elmira school budget passed. Elmira Heights School District budget passed. Horsehead School District passed. And again, if you have any questions, specifically most passed, there was that threshold on Corning Painted Post of 60%. That would have passed if it weren't for the 60%, but not by much. Kind of remarkable. 1,431 to 1,418. So just a handful of votes separating, even if it weren't at 60%. All right, we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hasselson studio on Market Street in Corning. Coming up in the next hour, we will be talking with Michael Joseph. We talked with him a couple times on this program. He's going to tell us about Saturday's event at the Wings of Eagles Discovery Center. You will not want to miss that. Steuben Senior Services Fund interview, and that is coming up probably around 7:20. We have a couple... did you see a couple quick things? And I know we've talked about this extensively for the last few days, so I don't want to focus too much on it. But the White House has made 9 brutal corrections to Biden's NAACP Detroit speech. This was the speech I mentioned yesterday where the president said that he was vice president during the pandemic and was sent to Detroit to fix it. That, of course, I think goes without saying, was one of the corrections. And I don't know. I know they make corrections to the official transcript on a somewhat regular basis, but this one seemed almost a little bit aggressive, where the mistake he made was crossed out and in parentheses saying what he actually meant. 9 in one speech. He said that he was the vice president during the pandemic. Pandemic was changed to recession. That's what he was talking about, the recession. He also, another change, he said, folks, I'm humbled to receive this organization, which defines the character and consequences of what we do. Organization, which would make no sense. You don't receive an organization, was award. I don't even know how to pronounce this. It was truly inspiring. He said in one meaning inspiring. So some of these are, when the New York Post says brutal, they mean brutal. I protected and expanded the Affordable Care Act, saving millions of families $800,000 in $8,000 a year in premiums. So he started with $800,000, caught himself, said $8,000 a year in premiums. The supposed right answer, $800,000. So that was another correction. We're cracking down on corporate landlords who keep rents down. We're cracking down on corporate landlords who keep rents down. He meant to say we're cracking down on corporate landlords to keep rents down. He also said Trump not only denies reproductive freedom, but worsens the mortality rate for black moms who have nearly 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy complications than a white woman. And he was supposed to say who are nearly 3 times more likely. So some of these minor, I don't even know how he mispronounced, because of course we know he's going to talk about threats to democracy. Trump calls insurrectionists who stormed Capitol Hill patriots, but he didn't say insurrectionists. Erectionists, I guess. IRREC. Anyway, bloodshed. But that's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump has said if he loses again in November, there will be, quote, bloodshed. What in God's name are we talking about here? Of course, he was referring to bloodbath, and even that is inaccurate because Trump was talking about economic bloodbath, as we all know. And then finally, just to wrap it up, he called the NAACP the NAAC. Those are 9 changes in one speech made by official White House fixers, for lack of a better term. All right, let's take another short break. I know we're covering a lot here. Oh, one last thing on that. Biden, this is at a different speech. Biden is being blasted by experts for repeating the debunked lie at the Morehouse College speech. I'm trying to find the exact quote here. Today in Georgia, they won't allow water to be available to you while you wait in line to vote in an election. I mentioned that was one of the quotes from Biden during the speech. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger posted, "It's 2024. I can't believe we're still dealing with lies about Georgia's election from the left and the right. Once again, Georgia doesn't have lines. Biden owes our election officials an apology and focus on the real issues. This, we'll say, darn inflation is hitting hard-working Georgians." Heritage Foundation senior legal fellow Zach Smith saying, "It's obviously a factually false statement. Every state bans electioneering near polling places, prohibiting giving money and gifts to potential voters, as Georgia election law does. To prevent unduly influencing them as they wait to vote is a good and reasonable policy. Of course, nothing in the law prohibits poll workers from providing water to voters, and nothing prohibits voters themselves from bringing snacks and water to eat and drink as they wait to vote." Smith also said Georgia's law about food and water is virtually identical to a New York election law that prohibits giving voters any meat, drink, tobacco, refreshment, or provision unless it has a retail value of less than $1. All right, now we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. A comment from a viewer. Unfortunately, once again, we are forgetting history. Weren't these students taught about what happened during World War II? The Jewish population of Europe was nearly annihilated, but that's okay. Now, when Israel's trying to eradicate Hamas, these same students are crying foul. I pity our society if we allow these students to continue their protests and ultimately gain control of the governments of the world. The thing about the protest, too, you always got to give that disclaimer. I'm for free speech. Of course, everybody is. But free speech does not equate to intimidating Jewish students and faculty, destruction, taking over buildings. It is sad. That's why when we see the president again erasing $7.7 billion in school loans, as we learned this morning, that's a new one, not on top of all the other money that the Supreme Court said he couldn't give away of taxpayers' dollars. That's why I think, and I know we had the former Congressman Joe Semplinsky on a while ago, and he was talking about it too. That's the kind of thing when people turn on the news and see these kids and the disgusting things they're saying, and I don't want to say kids, see these protesters, these agitators, and the disgusting things that they're saying, the hate that they're saying, and then they realize that they're paying off their school loans, the taxpayers, that is. Does that taxpayer say enough is enough? I'm working hard and I can barely keep food on the table with Bidenomics in effect? I don't really think it adds up to many people's minds. But thank you for the comment. Keep them coming in. Also, if you're just joining us, I'd be more than happy to update you on the school board vote. Just let me know what area you would like to get the information from. I'm going to go through that list at the top of the hour for those that just joined us at 7 a.m. So Aaron Rodgers has confirmed he turned down RFK Jr.'s vice presidential proposal. I don't know. Is it? Do you think this is true? I know we haven't had an RFK Jr. update in a while, and I felt bad. The rumors that Aaron Rodgers had been legitimately offered the opportunity to retire and become Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s running mate were true. Speaking to reporters at the Jets facility on Tuesday, Rodgers was asked how serious the talks between him and RFK Jr. were regarding him becoming the independent candidate's vice presidential selection. He said, "I love Bobby. We have a couple of really nice conversations, but there were really two options: retire and be his VP or keep playing, and I want to keep playing." What would that have done? A serious question. What do you think that would have done for RFK Jr.'s? It might have bumped him up. I don't know if I should say that, because Aaron Rodgers, I don't know how popular he is. I guess I don't follow close enough. But would that have bumped him to that 15% where he could have started really making a fuss now about not being asked in the presidential debate? But that's tricky, too, because the presidential debates, if they even happen, aren't being run by the normal commission. So are those rules in effect? I don't really think they are, and I think that's why some of the behind-the-scenes details were to keep RFK Jr. off the debate stage. And I don't want to start getting into a tangent on the debates. Obviously, happening early, as some have said, it kind of shows a weakness and a kind of pathetic that Biden called for these debates, especially a debate so early on, maybe signaling how weak his campaign feels he is doing. But back to RFK Jr., just to almost wrap up this hour. Kerry Kennedy is leading a heart-wrenching campaign against her brother. Well, her brother's White House bid. She's not running, too. When members of the Kennedy family joined President Biden in Philadelphia to endorse his re-election and denounce the presidential candidacy of the best-known Kennedy of this generation, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., one person stepped forward to make the family's case: his younger sister, Carrie. I've got to say, whatever you think about RFK Jr., I mean, I'm not going to vote for him. Maybe some of you are. I know there's a lot of people that I've talked to that are interested, anyway, in his campaign. He's right around, 10% is the last time I saw the numbers. You do got to say, this is a weird scenario. Because not only do you have the media turning on a Kennedy because they believe he will take votes from Biden, especially at a time when Biden's being called Genocide Joe and things like that, you could see an avenue where some people just go third-party candidate almost as a protest vote, like the protest votes we've been seeing during the primary. But you got to say, it's weird the media goes after him, as well as his family. I guess I never expected that to happen to a Kennedy, specifically the media. I didn't think the media would ever, in any way, shape, or form, go after a Kennedy. So Biden, when he took the stage, said nearly every single grandchild of Joe and Rose Kennedy supports Joe Biden. Oh, this is what Kerry Kennedy said, as her siblings and Mr. Biden flanked her on stage. That's right. The Kennedy family endorses Joe Biden for president. She said in an interview, "I love Bobby. It's heart-wrenching to be in this position." Quickly, because I just saw this message come in before we go to break. The Corning school budget didn't pass. I just tuned in. No, it did not pass. The budget failed to reach the 60% plus one. Therefore, it did not pass. And so I believe yes was 50.23%, if I'm reading these numbers from the school district correctly. Yes, 1,431. No, 1,418. So yes, technically was the vote, but it had to hit that 60% plus one because they were asking for so much in that tax levy. So it did not reach, and that was going to be an uphill battle right from the beginning, the 60% plus one. But even if you take that away and it were even 50-50, it was a close vote. I think people, maybe in Corning County Post School District, had enough of that kind of increase. That was a major increase. So nope, the budget did not pass. The budget did not pass in Corning Painted Post School District. Buses and vehicles, though, were approved. Southeast Steuben County Library was approved. And the Board of Education results were Kelly Bacalus, Sam Nichols, and Dale Wexel. If you have any other areas you'd like to know about, it looks like most other budgets did pass. But the Corning Painted Post school budget failed to reach 60% plus 1, therefore it did not pass, and it wasn't even close to 60%. Anyway, we got to take another short break. Last break of this hour, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up our first hour. Coming up in the next hour, we'll be talking with our good friend, Michael Joseph. That'll be right around 7:20. That's during the Student Senior Services Fund section of our program. Don't miss that. At the top of the hour, a couple minutes in, as we reset the scene, I'll go through the numbers of some of the school districts. If you have any questions about the school district vote, please text in, and I will try to find which area you are looking for. But we'll go through some of the bigger districts when we come back at the top of the hour. But yes, as I was mentioning, Kerry Kennedy leads a heart-wrenching campaign against her brother's White House bid. Kerry feels a special burden with his candidacy, a burden that impacts her work in a negative way, said Christopher Kennedy, one of their brothers. She has supported hundreds of human rights activists around the world. Her abilities would be diminished if the Kennedy name is associated with fringe thinking, crackpot ideas, and unsound judgment. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. declined to comment on his sister's role in the Biden campaign. I think I'll stay out of this controversy, he said in a text message. Well, yeah, I feel bad for Kerry Kennedy. She doesn't want the Kennedy name associated with fringe thinking, crackpot ideas, and unsound judgment. I don't know if that was an issue when Ted Kennedy... well, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We don't have to dive into that. Yeah, the whole Kennedy family turning... and the media turning against Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Hey, we got a couple of updates when we come back. I'll give you some more information on this, but Mike Johnson having a kind of an issue right now. 3 top staffers have resigned, and after that news broke, another top staffer resigned. Mike Johnson's communications director. Let me tell you, communications director is very important. Comment from a viewer. I could keep my home another year thanks to Corning voters. I know. Yes, I can keep my home for another year thanks to Corning voters. Because the Corning Paint and Post budget did not pass. They needed to get 60% plus 1, and they failed. And boy, it would have been close even if it wasn't at 60%. It goes to show you how important voting is. Now, put aside that it had to be 60%. Let's say that wasn't the case. That would have been decided by 20, not even 20 votes, and you're telling me voting doesn't matter. Imagine if you would have gotten home, you woke up this morning, and the side that you didn't want happen is all because of 20 votes, and you forgot to vote. It's amazing how close some of these races can be. We're going to talk about that at the top of the hour, but right now I have to take a break, and then we are going to, in mere moments, start hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. So please stay with us. We'll be right back. And we are back. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I am your host, Frank Acomb. Coming up in a little bit, we're going to be talking with Michael Joseph about that upcoming on Saturday event at Wings of Eagles Discovery Center in Big Flats. Comment from a viewer, and then we are going to get into the school votes, just so you have a quick overview in case you missed it, in case you're just joining us at 7 a.m. Now that the Corning Paint and Post school budget didn't pass, based on those parameters, how long before the administration finds a way to get rid of those parameters, allowing passage to be yes or no, not 60% plus 1? That's a great question. I think that may be a little bit of, you may be a little jaded from, what was that called? Option 2? Was that what it was? Op 2? Where the new school is voted down how many times, but it just took that one the last time, and then that was the one that counted. So I can understand why you may be a little pessimistic or a little bit jaded on that. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I was trying to look during break. So this was a really big tax levy they were asking for. And if I'm not mistaken, the budget that now goes through is still an increase in the tax levy. If I'm not mistaken. But I'll find out more about that and tell you in the break, because I'm... Yeah, here it is. Not opposition. It was Proposition 2. Remember that? That's what it was. Okay, that's unrelated to what I'm looked at here. Proposition 2, where it was the school and just kept getting turned down. And then after the final time, they voted on it and it passed. Then that was the one that counted. But this would have been an adoption of the school budget at this is for Corning Penny Post, $139,181,455 with a tax levy of 4.97% for the upcoming school year. Wow. This tax levy is 1.08% more than last school year and requires 60% of the vote in order to pass. So that is a requirement, and that's why I wanted to bring that to you. Now, I don't know what happens. I thought the other budget, if it weren't to pass, I had that information at one point, and I will try to find that for you during break. I'm rambling on here, and I apologize. So according to Painted Post, if you're just joining us this morning, the budget failed to reach the 60% plus one. Therefore, it did not pass. Buses and vehicles were approved. Southeast Steuben County Library was approved. And the Board of Education results were Kelly Bacalus, Sam Nichols, and Dale Wexel. Elmira City School District, their budget passed. Elmira Heights School District, budget passed. And the proposition to purchase 2 buses passed. And the capital reserve proportion passed. In Horseheads, the budget passed with a 1.4% tax levy increase, and the Board of Education seats, there was no challengers, I don't believe, and the proposition to buy new school buses passed. So that's a quick overview. If you have any questions about any other school districts in our viewing area, let me know, and I will find out that information during the break as I find out the information of what the budget now goes to. I knew the answer to that, but I didn't bring in my notepad on it this morning because I was running a little late, and it takes a little bit of. Here's a comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning, Frank. Corning Painted Post School District should be ashamed of themselves for spending $139 million in 1 year. Yes, that was what they were asking for in the budget. Not a lot of discussion on it. I know I shouldn't say that. There was a lot of discussion within the community. I heard a lot of people talking about it, but not a lot of discussion. In general, I know they had one forum, I believe it was, maybe 2. Okay, we got another comment from viewers. If you're just joining us and you want to find out about certain school districts, please let me know. I have most of them here. I know it gets a little wonky reading numbers, but from a viewer, the Bath budget. Bath School District passed 342 yes, 82 no. That is a 2.07% tax levy increase. The Board of Education seats, Tess McKinley, and the bus proposition passed as well. Now, as I mentioned, and please, if anybody else has any questions, I have a few of these here. I've some that I thought may pop up, but I can search for more during breaks. One thing I'm always amazed about, and hear me out on this. Now, this is, Corning Painted Post is a kind of an anomaly on this one, but most of the time when you go through the list, school budget passes. And we had, a viewer yesterday comment on this, that it's people, it goes back to the old vote yes for kids, where they guilt you into saying, this is for the kids. And when they talk about the budget, it's always a scenario where, well, if we don't get this passed, we're going to have to cut. And it's always the worst thing. We're going to have to cut art or public safety officers or, football. It's always the ones where taxpayers said, oh, no. So normally they pass. But when you look at these lists and so many of the school budgets pass, I have, when it has a tax levy increase, I have, part of me thinks, and hear me out, and you tell me, because you might have been for the budget, you might be against the budget. This isn't a confrontational argument that I'm making. I'm just curious, because it's hard to hear the conversations time and time again about the mass exodus in New York State, how expensive it is to live in New York State, how you can no longer afford to live in New York State. People are coming up with 5-year plans to prepare themselves to leave the state. As the one person said earlier this morning, now they can stay in their home because Corning didn't pass. I understand. People saying, I can't afford to live here any longer. But yeah, every time a budget comes up, and again, Corning Painted Post is different because they were asking for so much. It was 60% plus one. But they always pass. And I find that interesting because here's an example where you can say, well, you know what, not in all instances, but most of them are going up some percentage, where you can actually have a vote to say, no, I don't want my taxes to go up. And people just time and time again go and vote themselves that tax increase, and then they'll continue to complain about the high taxes and the cost of living in New York State. That's just my thoughts in general when I see this. It's not knocking you if you're pro-budget. It's just curious to me. But again, according to Post, a little bit different this time because they were at 60% plus one. Okay, coming up a little bit later on, Michael Joseph. First, Mike Johnson has lost 3 high-powered staffers barely 6 months into his speakership. The influential advisors, Bretan Specht, Jason Urofsky, and Preston Hill, are leaving Johnson's office at the end of May. Punchbowl News reported. Each of the 3 previously worked for then Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Then, as that news broke yesterday, it broke that his communications director, Raj Shan, is gearing up to leave his position, with the former Trump deputy press secretary expected to leave before the end of summer. Shan has served as a key link to Trump allies as the Louisiana Republican has faced threats to his gavel from conservative hardliners. Shan's timeline on leaving Johnson's office is unclear, but he is expected to remain on through at least the end of the month. It's an honor to serve Speaker Johnson, especially through such a historic time, Shan said in a statement. He has shown tremendous leadership, navigating the conference through difficult issues. Speaker Johnson has developed an authentic brand of a strong leader, willing to make tough calls and place our nation and the institution first. Interesting. Just passing that along to you. I know I always try to force the Mike Johnson conversation, and I apologize for that, I suppose. No, I don't apologize. Also, if you're just joining us, in the 7 o'clock hour, the Biden administration this morning announced $7.7 billion in student debt handout for 160,000 borrowers. This puts the final number, not the final, the number thus far of erasure of student loan debt by the taxpayers, by you, the taxpayers. We have now cleared $167 billion. Now, I'll ask you, the optics of this. When we talk about the college protests, when we learn so much about the indoctrination, when we see what is essentially, as the New York Post put it, obnoxious agitators screaming anti-Semitic hate, waving Hamas flags, when you see that, and then you see Biden erasing student debt, do those things match up to you? Does that bother you as you struggle to go pay for your groceries, pay for your gas, pay for your day-to-day living, the cost of living that you can't afford? And now you realize maybe you didn't go to college. Maybe you did, but you had to pay your own way. Maybe you paid a child's way. And you got no reward for that other than the education, I suppose, the diploma. But you got no reward from that from the government. You didn't get your loans paid off. But now you are paying off those people's loans that we're seeing, and maybe not those protesters specifically, but people like them before. I don't know. I just find that really interesting. Yes, and this is right to my point, like this viewer said. So if we paid our student loan, should we get a refund? Yeah, why not? I mean, maybe make the suggestion to Biden. Why not? Send the suggestion to Biden. Do it quickly, though, because election's coming up, and he's looking for some big moves to help his polls. So maybe send hey, can we get a refund here? I can go and start yelling and calling you Genocide Joe if you want at protests, if it gets me back my student loan, if that's what scares you. And remember, this is to win over those kids that are calling him Genocide Joe. They're not kids, protesters, they're college students, young adults that are calling him Genocide Joe, that don't like his Israeli policies, even though his Israeli policies are weak. Yes, and to the other viewer's point, and I don't have it in front of me, but yes, thank you. I did read your comment yesterday, and it's not right here because the system that I have works a little bit different than a normal text. And I would agree with you. I don't think you're far off. Now, this is horrible conversation for me to have because no one knows what I'm talking about. Here we go. Think back to the first year you were able to vote on the actual budget. It was voted down. Whether or not it's true, the next year, I think the school administrators came up with a budget for approval. This became the contingent budget. They had padded the budget with an arbitrary amount of money, and that became the actual budget the school district published for us to vote on. If that budget passed, great. If it didn't, they could revert to the contingent budget, and they would still get the funding they felt they required. I'm not saying that that is what's actually happening because, like you said, the annual budget is always advertised as for the children. It just seems to me the school administrators would use this tool to make their jobs easier and maybe get extra funding for other fluff items. So thank you for that comment. I'm going to try to find out a little more information about the budget when we come back, but I'm running a tad bit late, not as bad as last hour, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Coming up in just a few moments, we are going to talk with Michael Joseph, so don't miss that during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. So I cannot find the exact information. I thought I had it, and like I said, I have it at home. What specifically happens now that the budget at Corning Painted Post School District did not pass? What is the next step? It's a great question. I'm going to keep doing research to find that information. But if you, the viewer, know the exact answer, I would appreciate a heads up. Okay, quick. Oh, going to add that wave there. Okay, yes. And if you have any questions about the school budget in general, about what passed and what didn't, just reach out. Here's a comment from a viewer. I assume that while the student loan forgiveness from Biden's handlers will secure some young sheeple votes, the Supreme Court will probably overturn most of the vote buying, but that will most likely be after the election. You have to love the integrity of the left. Thank you very much, Ken, from Horseheads. Speaking of Horseheads, the school budget passed. Okay, enthusiastic Bronx residents are ready to welcome Donald Trump. This is his first New York City campaign event in 8 years. They interviewed some people in the area at the New York Post, some saying, I really hope he wins. Let's see. Everybody was working. The prices were lower and the economy was great. Talking about the Trump administration. Before addressing the possibility of voting for Biden, not on my deathbed, said Joe Randazzo, the owner of Randazzo's Seafood on Arthur Avenue. I really hope he wins. I know this is all anecdotal, but he will be campaigning in the Bronx to see what kind of, the New York Post went out there to see what kind of traction the Republicans' message might get in a bureau that hasn't gone for the Republican Party in 100 years. So you can find that for yourself if you want to see those interviews at the New York Post. But why is Trump rallying in deep blue Bronx, where thousands are expected to show support? Asked the New York Post. Again, the Bronx not having gone Republican in over 100 years. Not since Calvin Coolidge won every Empire State County in 1920 and 1924 has a GOP candidate won the Bronx, and Trump is unlikely to break that trend, having failed to reach 10% support in 2016 and barely reaching 15% 4 years ago. However, the Trump campaign insists that Thursday's evening's event, where a crowd of up to 3,500 people are expected, is in keeping with how the 77-year-old's team has been utilizing New York City throughout the hush money trial that has kept Trump cooped up in a Manhattan courtroom for weeks, and is part of a larger strategy for the 45th president to reach out to traditionally Democratic voters. Interesting. Well, why not? I mean, look at New Jersey. Deep blue New Jersey, he had 100,000 people show up. But the idea is he's not afraid to show up. And I think that's an important... You've got to have the outreach. You can't always go to just friendly areas. I wonder if AOC will be there. You know how they always have local politicians? If I have my doubts. Anyway, I got to take a break because when we come back, we're going to be talking with Michael Joseph during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. A great event coming up this Saturday, so mark your calendar. You're going to find out all about it when Michael Joseph joins us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. If you have any questions about the school board vote, let me know, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. And joining us, it's our friend, Michael Joseph. Michael, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you, Frank.
We have a lot to talk about. It's hard to believe the last time we talked, this was in the initial stages of planning. And here we are just a few days away. Are you ready?
Yeah, it's exciting.
It is the Return of the Red Tails, presents Remembering Tuskegee Airmen. Tell me about what perfect weekend for this, right? Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
May 25th, Wings of Eagles Discovery Center and Horseheads, of course, 10 to noon. Tell us about it.
What's exciting about this is we're going to be remembering Tuskegee Airmen who have come here over the years. Mm-hmm. We started doing this back in 1997.
Is that right?
Yeah. Wow. And Lieutenant Herbert Thorpe was to be our keynote speaker. However, he passed suddenly. But luckily for us, back in December 20th of last year, we recorded his last interview, thinking that, well, if he's not able to make it, we would have something.
Sure.
And sure enough, yes, we do have something. And it's a lot of other footage that has never been released. So we're looking forward to sharing it with everybody.
Have you found it difficult to watch the last recorded interview? I know you guys are so close. It must be kind of a double-edged sword. It must feel good, but also be tough.
Yeah, I've got mixed feelings about it. It's fantastic.
Oh, good.
You know, just reviewing it, it just makes me feel like he's still present with me. So I'm enjoying it.
Well, I know when you were kind enough to set up the interview when I got to interview him, and this was relatively early on in the TV show, what an amazing story. And what a humble guy and just the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's going to be nice to hear his final interview. That's one of the many, I guess you would say, events surrounding this event coming up on the 25th from 10 to noon, Wings of Eagles Discovery Center. Tell us about some of the guests that will be there.
Okay, so we're going to have some family members of Tuskegee Airmen present.
Oh, okay.
And so after the presentation, we'll be able to talk to them and ask them personal questions about what was it like growing up with the Tuskegee Airmen, or being very close to a Tuskegee Airman. The Tuskegee Airmen's Faithful Pursuit show car will be there.
Oh, neat.
It's a car that was dedicated in 2004. It's exactly 20 years ago. And the display at the Wings of Eagles, the Tuskegee Airmen display, it's been refreshed, and it will also be rededicated at this event.
And we're talking about Memorial Day weekend. How appropriate. I know this is for all ages, and you can't think of a better opportunity for young people to get a chance at history here and witness history and hear the interviews, hear the question and answers, see how much effort you put into this.
Yeah, well, this is special. Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to be offering these T-shirts, event T-shirts.
Yeah, they're nice. They turned out really nice.
T-shirt plus a glossy program. It's a beautiful program. There are door prizes. The entry is just $25.
This is what I think has always been so amazing about these events that you put on throughout the years, because this is really unique and rare for people in our community to have an opportunity, again, to shake hands with history.
Yeah. You know, thanks to the generosity of our sponsors, we were able to host this event at a very low cost to participants, and also children under 10 are free. 10 and under are free.
Absolutely free. And I know it's down to the wire here, but can people still sponsor? Maybe not this event, but just sponsor your organizations and getting an opportunity to spread the word like this?
Yes. Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated, who I represent as regional representative, they are able to take direct donations, and they are a 501c3 organization. Okay. So if you would make your check out to Tuskegee Airmen Inc., we can make sure that TAI gets that donation.
Okay. And it's important. I mean, this kind of event and this kind of history lesson isn't free. Right? I mean, a lot goes into this, not just the time and effort you're putting into it, but nothing is free in this world. So for $25, you get all of that, the T-shirt, the program, and just an amazing afternoon, 10 a.m. till noon. This Saturday, Wings of Eagles Discovery Center, remembering Tuskegee Airmen. For someone that hasn't been to one of your events before, what should they expect?
Well, what they're going to see is we allow the Tuskegee Airmen themselves to speak. So you'll be seeing a video with Herbert Thorpe telling his story. And unlike past events where we've used their screen,
Right.
we purchased a high-definition 75-inch
Oh, wow.
TV. So the people who are participating in our event, they'll be able to see this in high def.
And I also want to mention, and you can tell us more about it, but in addition to honoring these American heroes, a portion of the funds raised from this event will support the Tuskegee Airmen Chapter Operations Fund and Educational Assistance Fund. What do those funds do after the event?
So there are young people that are interested in pursuing careers in technology, aviation, and those funds help them to achieve their goals.
Right.
Right.
Oh, so what a great cause to have this benefit. And again, I don't want to keep using this term, but the fact that this is your chance to witness history and really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for just $25. How long have you been planning this event? I know we talked about it last time we spoke, but I'm sure this has been in the works for quite some time.
Yeah, about 2 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, do you find it difficult to plan that far in advance because of some of the issues that associate with this?
Oh, certainly. Most of the effort takes place in the last, couple months of the event.
Yeah. How many volunteers do you need for an event like this? Is there a lot of volunteers involved?
Yeah, we probably have about 15 volunteers.
Oh, okay. So that's a pretty good amount of volunteers.
Right.
But they get to witness it too.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad place to volunteer,
So,
right?
the Civil Air Patrol, the American Legion.
Oh, yeah.
We encourage people like Scouts to participate as well. And so our volunteers get free entry into the program.
Okay.
Right.
Is it too late to have someone volunteer? Probably at this point.
Well, yeah, you know what? Come to the event, and we'll put you to work.
There you go. Now, when you first started holding these events, did you ever imagine it would grow like this?
When we first started doing it, it started out pretty big.
I know.
Yeah, we had several Tuskegee Airmen, 2 stretch limousines, and it was quite an event because it was 4 days long.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, that was 1997.
Yeah.
And over the years, we've had many Tuskegee Airmen come back to the area. And so we started calling it Return of the Tuskegee Airmen and Return of the Red Tails.
Yeah.
Later on.
And I don't remember what year this would have been, but I'll never forget seeing the American flags line up when the Tuskegee Airmen came into the I don't know if you call it auditorium, but into the Wings of Eagles. Boy, I don't think there's anybody there that didn't have goosebumps.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it.
I know.
Yeah, that was 2014.
Is that 2014?
Yeah.
Wow, time flies.
And that was the Patriot Guard Riders of New York that stood for us.
Yeah.
And we will have Patriot Guard Riders there again. The ride captain, Don Higgins, his father was a Tuskegee Airman, and he'll be there.
There's so many people that I think have been affected by this through the years in such a positive way. So that must make you feel good when you first thought about starting events like this. It must make you feel good to see it get to this point where you know how many really lives it's changed.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something we love to share.
Yeah.
The Tuskegee Airmen are not just World War II fighter pilots.
Right.
They are Americans that went into public life that have touched, their efforts have touched the lives of every American. And we're going to be sharing some of that because these people did amazing things, not just during the war, but after the war. And there were women involved too. And we'll be highlighting some of the accomplishments of the female Tuskegee Airmen.
Now, do you plan on holding more events like this in the future?
Yes.
Yeah, to continue to grow. Can people find out more about your organization if they want to join? I know we talked about this last time, but if they want to get involved behind the scenes?
Yeah, they certainly can.
Just go to, I know there's a website, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think if you just search Tuskegee Airmen Inc., I think it comes up, right?
And our chapter, it's the Claude B. Govan chapter.
Okay.
Now, locally, because I'm 250 miles away from the New York chapter, I work through an actual organization called Return of the Red Tails Racing.
Oh, okay.
And our goal is to popularize the Tuskegee Airmen message through motorsports. So that's why we have the Tuskegee Airmen's Faithful Pursuit, which was the first officially recognized Tuskegee Airmen theme car.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so we'll continue to do events like this, and we encourage people, if you're a car person,
Yeah.
get a red tail for your car. I drive around a red tail Mustang every day.
You know, in the old days, you would have said, bring your camera. But now everybody has a camera on them at all times. But there's a lot of picture opportunities. I know I still have on my phone from the event you were talking about, what did you say, 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah, and you know, they're just such special moments that you just can't repeat. So bring your camera, bring your phone. Do you think it's because it's such a special event why so many people want to be involved? I know there are people that are holding certain dedications and like that throughout the morning. It's got to be something that people rally around and want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and make sure you get there early because although we say the program starts at 10, get there early because the American Legion is going to be doing a special 3-volley 21-gun salute, honoring the Tuskegee Airmen and playing taps for them. And so it'll be a very informative program, and that's what we really want to share. We want to preserve that knowledge and history and share it with people.
Well, and that's what I think was so special, and that's why it was such an honor to talk to Herbert Thorpe, because when you hear what you are hearing is that history of his life, and it's just, and I can't wait to hear about the new last interview and see what else kind of tidbits you learn along the way, you know?
Yeah, there's some unusual things that you typically don't get at interviews like this, because what we did was we gathered 4 of us together, and we're talking to him, and we all spent time in Brooklyn, either grew up there or spent some time there.
Sure.
And we're all different generations.
Yeah. Well,
and so that is quite an interesting
different questions
discussion.
And things. Yeah, I'm sure that actually leads to a really unique interview.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we go from wartime discussion to talking about music and the different eras of music, bebop, hip hop, jazz.
Yeah. Oh, this is going to be a wonderful event. Again, it's Return of the Red Tail 2024 presents Tuskegee Airmen. It's this Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon at the Wings of Eagles Discovery Center in Big Flats. It's $25 to get that amazing shirt and that amazing program. What should people know who have never attended one of your events just before we go?
Yeah, they should know that it's something that will be eye-opening and enlightening for them. A lot of people know about the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. They've heard something about it. But believe me, there's so much more to it.
So much more. And I think that's what was so nice when I got to talk to Herbert Thorpe and others throughout the past, whether in radio or TV. You don't even know the beginning of it. You really, well, you would know. You're the historian, and you've got to. It's got to be overwhelming sometimes.
I'm learning stuff every day. Because there's just so much. And each individual, we're taking a look at an individual's life, and you'll see how rich that is. And just think, there were 15,000 plus of these people. We could be telling stories for the next 100 years, and you won't repeat it.
Right. You know? And I'm sure there will be telling stories for the next 100 years. So, again, thank you for doing this. I know it's the community thanks you as well. I think it's going to be a big event. As always, again, coming up on Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon, Wings of Eagles Discovery Center, Big Flats. As always, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, wonderful.
All right.
Thank you,
right
Frank.
Of course, anytime. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Our beautiful view of Market Street on this Wednesday morning, 7:38. You're watching Frankly Speaking. Thank you again to Michael Joseph. Look what I got. And you can get one too if you attend Saturday's event remembering Tuskegee Airmen this Saturday. Wings of Eagles Discovery Center, 10 a.m. till noon. So thank you very much to Michael Joseph for being on the program again. We've had him on quite a few times, and I always enjoy chatting with him. Back to a school vote for just a moment, because we got some comments from viewers. I thought this was the case. The way I understand it now, so Corning Painted Post wanted to increase taxes, pass the tax cap, by so much that they needed 60% plus one. So didn't Horseheads. Horseheads got the 60 plus one, so their budget passed. Corning Painted Post did not, and it was a close vote. Not close to 60%. It was just a close vote in general. So the budget failed in Corning Painted Post. The budget did not pass. So now it'll go to the 2.97% tax increase, because that's where the cap is at. So now our taxes, instead of that high number, will only be slightly less of a high number, 2.97%. If you are from other areas and you want to know what the results were, just let me know, just message. But yes, so now Corning Painted Post will be at a 2.97% tax increase for this year's budget, unless they try to do some other form of a budget. I think what I read somewhere that if it did go to 2.97%, there'd be like a dozen people laid off, like teachers' assistants, and I think they said security, something like that. But I'm sure some things can be finagled now that the decision has been made. I don't know. We'll find out more, I'm sure. So here's some comments from viewers. Frank, do you have any idea how many registered voters in the Corning School District? No, I don't. I try to look it up, and that's a difficult number to find. Maybe if we had some time, we could have contacted the Board of Elections, but I don't know. But if anybody does have that general info, because I will say, looking at the numbers according to Pen and Post, I know let's face it, they're going to be dismal compared to probably the number of actual registered voters, but 1,431 yes, 1,418 no. That seems like a higher number than normal, and there was quite a line when I went, so that's anecdotal. And if you look at in Horseheads, it was 1,824 yes, 906 no. So there we go. Oh, got some waves coming in. Another comment from a viewer. I thought of an idea. Maybe it's time for different tax levels based on whether or not you have children in the public school system. When my children were going to school, I had no problem assisting in the funding of their education. But that was over 35 years ago. Maybe it's time for a two-tier, at least, system for school taxes. Those that have children in the school system and those who don't. That's a good point. You may have people that don't have children be more accepting of an increase if it meant they were maybe at a different tier, right? Maybe at hey, I'm willing to help. Because we're still going to help in Corning Pen Post. We're still going to have a 2.97% increase. That's just better than what they were originally proposing. So that's which is kind of an interesting way of looking at that, if you want to really think about it. And it's not a knock on the school district. They were going to increase taxes, but instead of a high number, it is now not as high of a number, but still very high. What was it? Why can I not find any of my paperwork this morning? I can't remember what the actual proposal was going to be at. Oh yeah, bringing the total, that's what it was. Total to 4.97%. Sometimes numbers escape my mind. 4.97%. So there you go. The budget included a 1.08% increase to the tax levy, bringing the total to 4.97%. There we go. All a little wonky. Sorry, we're moving along here. Thank you for all the comments. If you have any more questions, I have to mention this because I don't want to run too late, and I know I have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Trump trial because there's some interesting information coming out specifically from Alan Dershowitz. But before that, just to quickly mention this, did you realize that the FBI was authorized to use, quote, deadly force in classified document search at Mar-a-Lago? That's according to court filings. The Department of Justice authorized, quote, the use of deadly force when FBI agents swarmed former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence in August of 2022. I don't know what that means when it comes to Secret Service being there, if the president is there when that happens. And I mean, that seems very heavy-handed to me. Agents in the August 8th raid were tasked with seizing classified information, national defense information, and U.S. government records. The authorities also were told to conceal their law enforcement equipment and come armed with ammo, handcuffs, and medium and large-size bolt cutters. The FBI followed standard protocol in this search, as we do for all search warrants, which includes a standard policy statement limiting the use of deadly force. No one ordered additional steps to be taken, and there was no departure from the norm in this matter. But they were authorized. Interesting. According to the lawyers Todd Blanche and Christopher Kise, the nearly 10-hour unconstitutional search swept through the Palm Beach Estate's gym and kitchen, as well as the bedroom suite of Melania and bedroom of the couple's teenage son, Barron. Okay, we got to take a quick break. Then we're going to, I think you're going to find this information really interesting. Where are we at break-wise? Okay, we'll be right back. Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. How much fun are we having this morning on Frankly Speaking? We're covering everything, and thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Elise Stefanik, again, potentially on the short list for vice president, has filed an ethics complaint against Judge Mercan. Acting Judge Juan Merchan is in clear violation of section, well, we're not going to read the whole section, of the rules of judicial conduct for the New York State Unified Court System, as his family has enriched itself through anti-Trump fundraising, mentioning this case directly, Stefanik wrote. A Trump acquittal would be detrimental to Democrats, including clients of Judge Merchan's daughter. If, on the other hand, Trump is convicted, such a verdict would provide a fundraising windfall for Democrat clients of Judge Merchan's daughter. All right, interesting. Now, I have to, yes, we have time, and I don't want to run out of time. I've been putting this off all morning. Alan Dershowitz. Where is it? Don't tell me. There it is. Said, I was inside the court when the judge closed the Trump trial, and what I saw shocked me. Now, if you're not familiar with Alan Dershowitz, he is a Democrat. He's been all over. He's a professor at Harvard Law School. But anyway, he said, I've observed and participated in trials throughout the world. I have seen justice and injustice in China, Russia, Ukraine, England, France, Italy, Israel, as well as in nearly 40 of our 50 states. But in my 60 years as a lawyer and law professor, I have never seen a spectacle such as the one I observed sitting in the front row of the courthouse yesterday. So this came out late yesterday. So it would have been the day before. The judge in Donald Trump's trial was an absolute tyrant. Though he appeared to the jury to be a benevolent despot, he seemed automatically to be ruling against the defendant at every turn. Many experienced lawyers raised their eyebrows when the judge excluded obviously relevant evidence when offered by the defense, while including irrelevant evidence offered by the prosecution. But when the defense's only substantive witness, the experienced attorney Robert Costello, raised his eyebrows at one of New York Supreme Court Justice Juan Merchan's rulings, the court went berserk. Losing his cool and showing his thin skin, the judge cleared the courtroom of everyone, including the media. For some reason, I was allowed to stay, and I observed one of the most remarkable wrong-headed biases I've ever seen. The judge actually threatened to strike all of Costello's testimony if he raised his eyebrows again. That, of course, would have been unconstitutional because it would have denied the defendant his Sixth Amendment right to confront witnesses and to raise a defense. It would have punished the defendant for something a witness was accused of doing. Even if what Costello did was wrong, and it was not, it would be utterly improper and unlawful to strike his testimony that undercut and contradicted the government's star witness. The judge's threat was absolutely outrageous, unethical, unlawful, and petty. Moreover, his effect while issuing that unconstitutional threat, revealed his utter contempt for the defense and anyone who testified for the defendant. Yeah, and his utter contempt for the law. He wants to be judge, jury, and executioner. He wants to see Trump come down because of this. The public should have been able to see the judge in action. But because this case has not been televised, the public has to rely on the biased reporting of partisan journalists. But the public was even denied the opportunity to hear from journalists who saw the judge in action because he cleared the courtroom. I am one of the few witnesses to this improper conduct who remain behind to observe his deep failings. Even when journalists do report on courtroom proceedings, their accounts must be taken with a grain of salt. When you watch CNN or MSNBC, you generally see an account of a trial that never took place. They spin the events so much that reality is totally distorted. I experienced that distortion firsthand when I saw one of my former students and research assistants, a CNN legal analyst named Norman Eisen, during a break and went over to talk to him. We chatted for a few minutes in the most friendly way. But NBC, the Daily Beast, and other media decided to make up a story about the event. They claimed that I had spat on my nemesis rather than a friendly conversation with a former student. Their account was made up, yet it was circulated through the media. To his credit, Eisen wrote to the media to correct the account, saying that the person sitting next to him would confirm the media's false reporting. I doubt we will ever see the retraction. This minor incident is simply the tip of a very large and deep iceberg, a false reporting about the trial that could only occur because the proceedings are not being televised. There are television cameras in the courtroom, and they record and transmit every word, but not to the public. Only select reporters in the overflow room see what the cameras transmit. There's absolutely no good reason why a trial of this importance, or any trial, should not be televised live and in real time. Allowing the public to see their courts in action is the best guarantee of fairness. As Justice Luis Brandeis wisely said a century ago, sunlight is the best disinfectant. When I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, we used to listen to the colorful accounts of Dodger games on the radio. Occasionally, when I went to a game and brought my portable radio, I could hear how the announcer exaggerated what was occurring on the field. Once television came along and everyone could watch the games live, the accounts became far more accurate because we could see everything for ourselves. A similar phenomenon would operate if trials were televised. It would force commentators to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Today, there's no check on partisan reporting of trials, and exaggerations and personal opinions are rampant. The American public is the loser. That was Alan Dershowitz. I thought it was a wonderful piece to get an inside look at what we're dealing with in that trial. Last break, and then we're wrapping things up on this edition of Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. And we are back. What a show we've had this morning. Thank you to everybody who joined us. The New York Post has a piece this morning. Jamal Bowman is a pathetic excuse for a congressman. You can find that for yourself. Did you see that Hunter Biden's ex-wife, his sister-in-law turned lover, they're going to have to take the witness stand in his gun trial? Hunter's former spouse, Kathleen Buell, his sister-in-law turned lover, Hallie Biden, and ex-girlfriend Zoe Keston will all be at his gun trial. Oh, sneaking a last-minute wave there, huh? Oh, David Harsani at the New York Post also has a piece. The left's lunatic assault on Justice Samuel Alito barely qualifies as clickbait. I know you've probably been seeing that news story make the rounds. Trying to attack the Supreme Court. This is what they've been doing from the beginning, whether it's Biden ignoring their decision, and of course now he's handing out another $7.7 billion announced today in school loan forgiveness, which is an interesting word to use all by itself. But he says not that it matters to Democrats and the media who keep inventing new standards and concocting imaginary ethical rules to delegitimize the court. And that's what it boils down to. So whether it's Biden ignoring the ruling, whether it's Democrats calling to stack the court, whether it's this constant PR. And Clarence Thomas had that great speech about it not that long ago, saying they're just trying to delegitimize us, trying to attack us at every turn. I don't even know. Oh, here we go. There is a piece about George Santos, if you're interested. He did an interview with the New York Post. Did you realize he says he doesn't like being famous, but yet he made $700,000 from those cameo videos? How about this? Coming from WHEC TV, a migrant from the Dominican Republic told reporters that New York's government is not living up to its promises to help migrants settle in American neighborhoods and to be handed freebies and jobs. Yaneri Pena spoke through tears and blasted officials of New York's Monroe County for making life much harder than she expected. Pena says that she has been traumatized about how she's been treated in New York as she spoke to the news outlet. It's very traumatic. She says it's been quite traumatic. Everything that has been told to us to come to Monroe County, to Rochester, hasn't been fulfilled. For the first few months, she stayed in a free Manhattan hotel. Now she has relocated to an apartment in upstate New York. Food rent is still paid for. Okay. Keep that in mind. Not liking Rochester. She said the living space does not have gas or electric, and she still hasn't qualified for a work permit even after being in the U.S. for a year. All right. Oh, and Mayorkas saying we've enforced the law, the border law, from day one and acted on the border, but it takes time. It takes over 3.5 years. It didn't take that long when Trump was in office. Kind of interesting. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to Michael Joseph for being our guest. Don't miss out on that event on Saturday. Wings of Eagles Discovery Center, 10 a.m. till noon, remembering Tuskegee Airmen. It's going to be very special to hear Herbert Thorpe's last interview. What a special guy, and we were so honored to have him on the program really early on the program. All right, if you have any comments that you missed getting in, feel free. That number is good for 24 hours, 7 days a week. And we'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 6 a.m. with Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. I look forward to it already.